Hey everyone, Military Gun Guy here. Fighting a cold. Today we are going to be fixing this fairly badly damaged handguard for a Persian Model 30 carbine. You can tell where this thing was just kind of fell apart. A couple things we're going to do is we're going to fill in these screw holes here, and then we're going to re-drill new screw holes. This is for the band that actually holds the handguard to the barrel. To the top of the barrel. Okay, this piece has already been fixed. You may be able to see a little bit of the line there. You can definitely see it under here. This part you don't need to really worry about. This you're gonna end up cleaning off and dribbling off. This is going to be a two-part repair, technically a three-part repair. What we're going to do is we're going to start by epoxying these two pieces together. I like to use the edge of a table because you can clamp the piece on there. I have actually already mixed up my solution of epoxy. I use the DevCon 2-ton epoxy. This stuff is great. Buy it in any hobby shop, buy it online, etc., etc. So what you're going to basically do is you're going to liberally coat the broken pieces with the epoxy. Now the other thing you're going to be doing with this repair is when this is done, if you want to strengthen it, and I would recommend it just because, you know, these things they're not subject to a ton of stress, but it just would probably cheap insurance. Given how damaged this thing is, or was, once we're done, what we'll actually end up doing is once the epoxy's dry, we're going to Dremel out a channel right in here, and we're going to lay in some fiberglass cloth, and then we're going to epoxy that in as well. That's going to provide a very, very strong repair. So basically all you do for this repair is you are putting these two pieces together, and you're using the table as basically a straight edge. So that way you're actually able to keep the pieces perfectly aligned. That looks really, really good there. What I like to do is you can use one of these clamps or one of these clamps. Sometimes you have to put varying degrees of pressure on this. You want this to be clamped as tight as possible, and it's something that's a little difficult to do. So what I actually like to do is use some of these clamps to kind of hold this piece in place. I didn't do it right. Sometimes it takes a second too. You can just move it over. The purpose of the wax paper actually is to keep any spills from sticking to themselves. Okay. Now what you can do with this is put a little piece of wax paper there. Move this over just a little bit. And you can bring this in here and then sort of clamp this down as well. It does look a little half-assed initially, but actually the weight of it will keep the two halves. Wants to be difficult. The weight of it will actually keep the two halves properly together. In this case, it's actually not going to work as well. You can also put a piece of dowel underneath and clamp that in place and use that as a kind of a jig to hold everything in place. I'm going to actually let this set as is here, and then as it starts to set up, then I'm going to put some clamping action there and hold that. In about 12 hours, this will be dry. And then what we're going to do is we're going to then glue this piece. You know, you don't want to clean this up at all. You want to keep those slivers intact because that's going to basically slide right in there like that. And then we're going to epoxy that in place. In fact, I might even be able to do that now. And we'll epoxy that in place. And once that's epoxied in place, then you'll have a nice, pretty permanent repair. Then at that point, it's just a matter of dressing it up, staining it, and your repair is now complete. And this fairly rare Model 30 handguard, again, these are Persian cavalry carbines, will be saved, essentially, because if you ever try to find one of these things, you'll find that they don't really exist anymore. The guns themselves are hard to find. The parts are even harder. This is the saddle ring carbine, and I'll show you the rest of that restoration later, but we're going to put that in there. This piece will slide. I was originally going to do this as a two-piece, or a two-piece repair, or two-part repair, sorry, but I can probably get away with this in a one-part repair. Yeah. So as you can see, the handguard is basically roughly set. I'll try to clamp this as best as I can in order to keep the two pieces nice and uniform. I'll probably actually just clamp right there. If I put downward pressure on that, that'll actually help, and then I'll squeeze these two pieces here, and we should be good to go. Sometimes you have to kind of play with it a little bit initially to see what's going to work, because unfortunately not everything is going to work. The pieces, they may initially seem cooperative, but then the minute that you try to put them together, then they start to fall apart. Again, you're seeing where the downward pressure of this is starting to pull this apart. So I'm going to put a little more pressure to tighten that up, and then I'm going to use this piece. And these jaws actually move, so unfortunately you need 3 hands sometimes. This piece there to hold it together. And if that doesn't work, sometimes you can actually come in from underneath and you can actually clamp it that way as well, using the bottom of the table as support. That doesn't even cooperate. Alright, so we're going to go back to square one. Make sure this piece is clamped. And slide that piece in there. The trick with these handguards also is that since you're working on a sloped surface of the handguard itself, sometimes it's a tad bit difficult to get, you can get your fingers in there, but sometimes actually getting a clamp in there to hold this thing as tightly as you can proves to be quite a hassle. Okay, so that piece is tight. This piece is tight. And in the end, you're going to be dressing this thing up. You're going to be, grinding up all the seams and whatnot, and then I'll show you how to do a stain. So you actually won't even, the repair will be mostly invisible by the time you're done, which will be kind of the nice thing. I'm using this to kind of press out any air bubbles. So when we come back, this will be dry, and I'm going to Dremel out underneath. I'm going to lay some fiberglass in there because I really want this handguard strong as possible. And then what we'll do is we will re-drill the holes for the metal ring, or the metal barrel retainer, or the barrel clip, and then we will clean this up a little bit more, and then probably end up putting it in a bit of a light wood bleach solution, and then we're going to dress it perfectly, stain it, seal it, and you'll see the end result, and then we'll move on to the stock. So thanks for watching. Real quick, here's an updated look at this handguard. I'll actually take this thing off of. I'll show you. This is how I ended up putting this together. You can see in there where that piece, I used a block of wood, and then right in there what I ended up doing is making sure that I used this clamp to hold the pieces to the table up and down. Okay, this clamp kind of squeezes everything together, so the pressure of this squeezing like that and this squeezing like this will actually keep the handguard together. Same thing on this piece here. You'll actually see where this is holding it down to the table. So this is going to be perfectly flat. It's not going to be screwed up in any way. And then again, this one here is providing the side-to-side pressure. So it's kind of like clamping the sides at the same time and the top and the bottom at the same time. So you don't really want to get these too, it looks almost like a surgical thing, but you don't want to get these things too tight. You got to make sure that you have just enough pressure to hold everything together. Otherwise, you know, your thing's going to crack. And you'll see a little bit, let's see if I can get this thing to focus a little bit better. There we go. You can see a little bit, tiny little bit of gap, but really not much. That's actually more just the actual seam itself. That will be filled in once we're done. Again, the same thing there. And then I'm using a piece of wax paper to keep all the parts from sticking together. The wax paper will actually form, and you may have seen it underneath, the wax paper will actually form a bit of a, like a barrier, basically. Again, those pieces of epoxy that are kind of sticking out will actually just be dremeled off once we dress this thing. You can see one of the cracks. This has actually been repaired, and I may go in underneath and dremel out just a little bit. This handguard is really, really thin, so that's why it fell apart so quickly. And then there's a piece here that was old that you can see that was also just kind of old and cracked and cruddy. I used a file to dress all this up, and then I'll finish it with sandpaper, but I want to get this thing like as strong as possible with the epoxy before I do anything. So they'll probably come back in about 12 hours, maybe even tomorrow morning, and this thing will be completely dry and then ready to be, you'll have to do is fill some low spots with epoxy, and then I'll do the Dremel aspect, and I'll show you how to do the Dremel part. I did it on the Krag, I think, at one point, or actually on the Krag handguard, but once you Dremel this out, you'll have a nice strong repair, and once you lay some epoxy fiberglass, or epoxy some fiberglass in, and then from there, like I said, it'll just be a final dress and stain and seal, and this thing will be good as new. So stay tuned.